Okay, guys, can we start the session? Am I audible to all of you? Is the voice is loud and clear? Just confirm me, guys. Okay, all right. So what we will do is we will start with the next chapter. We will discuss the village studies. Okay, guys, when it comes to this chapter, village studies, uh, it's actually a very, very dynamic topic because what is given in the syllabus is village studies. Okay, and there are hundreds and thousands of village studies. So it's just like, you have a topic in chapter 3 of paper 1, quantitative and qualitative methods. So if you remember, after discussing that quantitative methods and qualitative methods, that topic in general, I have told you, this is again a very dynamic and a volatile topic where the examiner can ask from thousands of methods. There are hundreds and thousands of quantitative as well as qualitative methods, and they can pick and they can ask anything, since that's how it is given in the syllabus, right? It's quite general. So same way here also, if the examiner want to make it difficult, he can pick any village study which you have not even heard of. But it never happened. I just told you a possibility. In case if they want to make it, they can do that. But generally, what they ask you is they will ask you things which is known to you. Andre Bette, they will ask you MN Srinivas, which is very simple, and SC Dubé. So these things we are going to study anyway. So what I will do is, they will not ask you the previous before 1947. Post 1947 is what they're going to ask you, because sociology is established, although in 1920, but it was mainly indology. Guys, you already know the history, right? We have discussed about the development of sociology, and we have discussed about how this indology to structural functionalism to this Marxist perspective, how it has been used in Indian society, we have discussed. I'll just give you a broad overview again. So if you see, again, when it comes to village studies, the context that we have discussed in indology, it is the same. So the British administrators, for the purpose of administration, they want to know India. Especially, they want to have a good control over the legal system as well as the revenue system. So they want to study India, and that is how this indology came. So initially what you try to do is you went for village studies. You try to understand villages. So initially, village studies has been conducted by the British administrators and the British scholars. You forget about indology. The approach used is indology. Now we are in village studies. So we will try to see how it has been evolved. So village studies, if you see, initially it is British administrators, and their objective is entirely different, right? They want to administer. So for that purpose only, they will do that. And mostly it is British administrators and British scholars. And the perspective of the approach is indology. So they come up with understanding like Indian villages are, monolithic, isolated, unchanging entities. Monolithic, atomistic, isolated, traditional, orthodox, unchanging entities. And they are of the opinion that the villages are ultimate signifier of authentic social life in India. So when I say ultimate signifier of authentic social life in India, I'm talking about, you see village, you will be able to understand the kind of life in India. So you will come across joint family system, you will come across the caste system, you will come across the judgmani system. All these we have discussed. I've explained about all this. So you will see how it has been practiced and how these things are impacted. And everything can be seen in the village directly. So if you go to village, you will see all these. And this is what the social life in India actually is. If you need to know India, if you need to study India, you have to go to villages, you have to study the villages. So here, the British administrators, they never went to the village and they never took the field study. I'm not saying they never did that. There were isolated field studies, but mostly it was indology. Okay, so initially it was guys, this is whatever I'm discussing, this is very important because you understood it once, and then this is what is going to be the framework. And based on this only, you will be able to answer. If you're not able to, if you cannot follow this, then it is going to be very difficult. That evolution, if you know, you will be able to answer any question in village studies. So initially, British administrators, they are of the opinion, the villages are like bands. You remember even in Durkheim, when we discussed about division of labor, we have discussed about people live in bands, no interaction between different bands. Like that here, villages also like different segments, and there is no interaction. Now, whether there was interaction or not, that is different thing that we will discuss later when it comes to Indian sociologists, that they will criticize this. But British opinion or British understanding is like this: villages are isolated and they are monolithic, atomistic, unchanging entities, traditional, orthodox, ultimate signifier of authentic social life in India. When I say ultimate signifier of authentic social life in India, all the typical social institutions which has been practiced in India, you can see the objective manifestation of all these if you go to the villages. Like you will see the typical functioning of village, joint family. You will see judgmani system, how is it practiced. You will see the caste system, how is it operated at the grassroots level. Everything can be seen and understood if you go to village. That's what you mean by ultimate signifier of authentic social life in India. And you will see all those things in the British studies. So this is what mainly the understanding all about. And there were statements like, the Indian villages are little republic, having everything they need within themselves and almost independent of any foreign relation. That means what? Indian villages are little republic, everything they need within themselves. That means there is no interaction with others. So they are completely independent of anyone. So I repeat the statement: Indian villages are little republic, having everything they need within themselves and almost independent of any foreign relation. Here, any foreign relation means between villages, there is no interaction. The statements you need to write exactly like this. So the first part is done. What? The village studies, which has been conducted by Britishers. There are many, right? Like, you will see Baden Powell and many, Charles Metcalfe. I'll give you all these names when it comes to the PDF, and the detailed discussion is coming with the PDF, but I'm giving you now the overall idea. So this is a framework which you need to have in your mind. So this is the understanding that has been developed by the Britishers. Then comes Indology, 1920, sociology established as a discipline in India, right? So and I've told you at that point of time, it is not purely sociology. Sociology was along with, mix of some other disciplines. So you can see some socio-anthropological studies during this time: G.S. Gure, Prabhu, etc. You will come across certain other village studies, which is considered as socio-anthropological studies. But at the same time, some economic studies are also continued. Economic studies will focus on this exploitation of money lenders, bondage issues, famine, and all those aspects. That is economic studies. On the other hand, socio-anthropological studies will be there. All these will be there. All these are based on Indology. Okay, so till 1947, it was like this. Then when it comes to 1947, we got independence. And post-independence, we have the welfare state. The welfare state was established. And a lot of promises has been made by the welfare state during the freedom struggle. And they have to implement and they have to go for it. Like, right, removal, inequality has to be reduced, or employment opportunity to be given, land reform, that is very important, right? So poverty alleviation and all these things are there. So all these things need to be done by the welfare state. Now you need an alternate approach, not what you have been read from the books. You need to go to the field. You need to actually understand what are the problems in villages. So at this point of time, you will see extensive village studies has been conducted by the scholars, okay, sociologists. So sociologist here is going to act as analytical aids or support to the government for these their policies and programs. But at the same time, on one side, the economic studies continued. The economists will also study. At the same time, now pure sociological studies will come. And in 1955 itself, in the year 1955 itself, 4 major village studies has been published, Village India, India's Villages, Rural Profile by Majumdar, then M.N. Srinivas, S.C. Dubey. So see, these 4 are very important village studies. And from here onwards, a lot of village studies has been conducted. And post 1960s, Marxist perspective is getting relevant, because I've told you this point before also, government programs, and now there is a critical evaluation required. Immediately after independence, welfare state was just established, and the emancipatory concerns which has been raised by Marx was entrusted to the welfare state. So it is expected that the welfare state will take care of all these problems, will remove poverty, inequality, provide employment opportunities, land reform will be done, and everything was expected, but it never happened. Right? Land reform itself had a lot of problems, fraud transactions, nexus between village officials and the bureaucrats and the landowners, and etc. So a lot of issues was there. So there was a critical evaluation which is required. So that is the relevance of Marxist perspective. Then comes field studies, which is based on Marxist perspective. And then later trend is like revisiting the villages. The studies has been conducted already. Revisit the village and identify the changes which has been happened. So this is how it has been evolved. On one side, I've told you British understanding. Now, if you get any question on village studies, it doesn't matter whether it is Marxist perspective, Andre Bete or G.S. Gure or A.R. Desai or M.N. Srinivas or S.C. Dubey or any for that matter, all, there is something common in all. What will be that? So if you get a question, guys, why I'm telling like this is because you cannot predict which one they are going to ask you. There are a lot of village studies are there, but obviously we will see the most common ones that I have given in the PDF, and I'll discuss also, like SC Dubey I'll discuss, MN Srinivas I'll discuss, and all those things I'll discuss. MN Srinivas, when we discuss, we'll have to discuss about the concepts like dominant caste and Sanskritization. That I'll do in caste system. Now, why I'm doing it like this is because in case if they're asking something, you should be in a position to write. So you'll start with what was village study before, talk about pre-independence village studies, and these were the conclusions. Then you will come across whatever question which has been asked, and you're going to tell the examiner that all the British understanding has been challenged or contested by this post-independence village studies, and you can write about that particular person also. So there are things which are common in post-independence village studies. So the atomistic, monolithic, isolated view of Indian villages has been broken. So none of the Indian thinkers are of that opinion. So the first line you can write is about the same thing. Obviously, villages are ultimate signifier of authentic social way of life in India, that nobody will deny. You can understand, you can see Jajmani system, you can see joint family, you can see caste system at its grassroots level and its operation and everything you can see at the villages. That thing is true, but at the same time, the atomistic view or the isolated or the unchanging, that view has been broken. That has been challenged by all the Indian sociologists. So that has been proved wrong. And even you can, if you remember, I have discussed about something like clan exogamy, where I discussed about the marriage rule in India. I discussed two rules, caste endogamy, clan exogamy. And I've explained along with that how clan and villages are connected. So on one side, you may say it is clan exogamy or gotra exogamy, but at the same time, I can connect it as village exogamy. If the entire clan or if the members of the same descendant is living in a particular village, then you have to go for village exogamy. So why don't you guys think about this? Now, village exogamy is something which is traditionally practiced as a marriage rule in India. So at least in case of marriage, are you dependent on the other village? Yes, right? That means we cannot say villages are independent, right? You are at, this is exactly the statement which has been given by Gure. At least in case of marriage, you are dependent on the other village, especially because of this concept of village exogamy. So this is something which is very common. Everybody will be accepting it. So these things, it doesn't matter whether it is a Marxian, whether it is Andre Bete, even Andre Bete is giving a statement. You can remember the statement I've incorporated in the PDF also. Things which you can write in every question. These are things which you can write in every question. At least as far as back living memory went, there is no reason, there is no evidence to believe that villages are self-sufficient even in economic sphere. So Andre Bete made this conclusion, the statement, even in economic sphere, you are not self-sufficient. Forget about the social sphere. What is social sphere? Marriage and other things. That has been discussed by Gure. Guys, specifically it has been discussed by Gure, but it is implied in all the thinkers. So you are dependent on other villages. That means not independent. Not only in social aspect, even in economic sphere also. No villages are even economically sufficient, self-sufficient. Okay, so that views has been broken. So this is something which has to be very, very common in all the thinkers. Now, this is enough for you to write a 10 marker, or even if you want to stretch it to 20 marker, even if you don't know a particular thinker, then you can write. So even if you know very clearly, for example, they're asking you MN Srinivas, there is going to be a cakewalk for you. But even then, you need to write all these things that I've discussed. You have to talk about bookish view or the Indology, the British administrators, the British scholars, their opinion, their understanding of Indian villages, isolated, monolithic, unchanging entities, very traditional, very orthodox. Villages as the ultimate signifier of social life in India. Villages are considered as little republic, having everything they need within themselves and almost independent of any foreign relation. Stretch it and then write it in your own terms. And this is going to be good content. And after that, post-independence, village studies has been done by using structural functional ethnography. Structural functional ethnography means structural functional perspective plus field study. So field study will give you the actual reality, what has been practiced reality. Okay, then you can talk about whatever I've discussed. Village, the monolithic, isolated, and atomistic view of Indian villages has been broken. That has been challenged by almost all the Indian thinkers. And then, at least in social sphere, at least in marriage, you are dependent on the others. Andre Bete said that as far as living memory went back, there is no reason to believe that villages are self-sufficient even in economic sphere. So economic sphere, you are connected. There are trades and everything which is going on. Social sphere also you are connected in terms of marriage. And whatever understanding that they have made has been challenged. This is common for all. And then comes to M. N. Srinivas, if you're getting a question on M. N. Srinivas. And then you need to discuss about the concepts like Rampura study, and we will discuss about all those concepts like Sanskritization and how Indology has been challenged here. Okay, dominant caste. I've mentioned about this when I've discussed about M. N. Srinivas before also, but I'll go again with this concept, not in village studies, but in the chapter on caste system, because that is more relevant in caste system. Okay, so I hope you got that clarity on what to write if the question is asked on village studies. And in general, guys, if you are getting question on village studies, the trend in village studies, the changes has been happening in village studies, then it's going to be a very good question. You have this much things to write, and that is going to be very well. You can manage it very well. Okay, so I'll just go with the PDF, and we have a lot of things to see here. So these are what we need to cover in this chapter. Village studies that we will see today. Land tenure system, land reforms. Guys, more than land tenure system, land reform. They won't ask you what are the land reforms, what are land tenure system, what are land tenure system, this Mahalwari settlement, Jotwari settlement, Zamindari settlement, and all those quinquennial settlements and everything which has been practiced. Land reforms, this tenancy reform, right? Abolition of Zamindars and Land Sealing Act, cooperative farming, right? So these are what land reform. They won't ask you this, rather they will ask you the impact, the consequences. Whenever they ask you about the consequences, again, this is going to be very easy for you. So what you need to do is you need to tell what has been happened with, these are the areas which you need to cover. Like again, green revolution, they're not going to ask you what is green revolution. Everybody know that. If at all they ask you that, they will ask you in economics only, not in sociology. So impact of this is what we are going to look for. So when you're writing the impact, you will talk about what is the impact on women, what is the impact on migration, whether this led to migration or not, whether this led to indebtedness and bondage related issues, right? So these are again all what happened, right? Indebtedness you need to write, then rural urban differences you need to write. So we will discuss about all these. So these are areas which you need to discuss. So I'll give you in different paragraphs for each of these things, the impact, what happened with family, how joint family has become nuclear family, what has happened with the authority of Karta. So these are the impacts that we need to look for here, especially when it comes to land reform and green revolution. Land tenure system, the impact is mostly unemployment and economy related issues. There are some social issues also there, more different new classes. What kind of classes have emerged? New classes have emerged after land reforms, after land tenure system. You can see zamindars have come. Land reforms, again, new different classes have come. Green revolution also created new classes. And then dominant caste also come, especially after green revolution, the dominant caste. Some caste became dominant. You see the conditions, you need to have the agricultural land and etc. Some conditions are there. What happened with the caste system? What happened with Jajmani system? Is this still continuing or not, especially after green revolution when agriculture become more commercial in nature? So the Jajmani system was based on obligation. So this obligation became contractual relation. The obligatory relation become contractual relation. Okay, so these are changes which has been happened. What happened with family? What happened with migration? What happened with women? What happened with the authority, the old person, the karta of family, right? So rural urban differences, indebtedness, bondages, these are what I'm looking for whenever I discuss the impact in this chapter. So if you have these heads in your mind, things are going to be very easy. You just need to fill that particular gap. So then we will see mode of production in Indian agriculture, whether it is feudal or agriculture, rural labor. So these are the 4 studies which I've told you, 55 itself, these 4 studies. Then more and more is coming. The isolated nature of Indian villages has been rejected by almost all village studies. So that's why I've told you it is common for all. Okay, and it is, the villages are always part of a wider social reality, and that means it's not independent. And there's a statement which you need to cut, copy, paste in your answer. If you get a question on village study, cut, copy, paste this. At least as far back in time living memory went, there was no reason to believe that villages are fully self-sufficient even in economic sphere. Andre Bette. And then comes features, the common features. These are the common features of all the village studies. You need to study that. You can write in almost all the village studies. Around 10 features are there, which is common. Specific village study by SC Dubé is given here. And you need to see the 6 factors in that study. We'll discuss that. Then land tenure system, land reforms, etc. That we will see tomorrow. So let's go with this PDF, guys. Again, like what I've told you, you need to cut, copy, paste this one. Same way, there is another statement here that villages are little republic. That also you need to remember exactly like that. This one, Metcalfe wrote. These communities, that means villages are little republic, having everything they need within themselves and almost independent of any foreign relation. So this view has been challenged by that statement. Not independent even in economic sphere. I hope you got the connection between each of these. Okay, so it's a very simple topic only. Only thing is that since it is given like this, then if they want to make it difficult, they can, but normally they won't do it. It all depends on the person who's preparing the paper and the instructions which has been given to him. All right, let's start this. Agrarian refers to a social situation which derives its existence from agriculture. Agrarian social structure include the holistic patterns of, guys, structure means patterns of relationship. Do you remember yesterday we were discussing about structure of family? And I've told you this was a question which has been asked, structure of family. And we have discussed about the structural changes. What we did there, we tried to understand patterns of relationship and what is the change in the pattern of relationship between the members of family, husband, wife, authoritarian to cooperation, brother, sister, authoritarian to fellowship type, right? And father, mother, instrumental head and emotional head. And now both are playing instrumental and emotional head. And we have discussed about the concept of filiocentric family and everything. So the point here is structure. When I get this one, it include what? Patterns of relationship woven around agriculture, connected to agriculture. Yesterday we were talking about family, so pattern of relationship within family. So similarly, social organization include pattern of activity related to agriculture. Thus, the study of agrarian society involves understanding its structure as well as organization. The term rural in sociological sense include both agriculture as well as non-agricultural, right? So here, when I say rural, agriculture will be more than 75%. So that means more than 75% agriculture, but non-agriculture will also be there. It could be 10% or 15% or even up to 24%. Okay, so that is what rural. That means what? When I say rural labor, it include agricultural labor as well as others, right? Some artisans, etc. They are not doing agricultural labor, but they do certain other kind of artworks, etc. So that is also considered as rural labor. So rural labor include agricultural labor. Guys, what is the difference between labor and worker? Something which I need to discuss in the chapter on in paper one, when it comes to rural, we will discuss rural labor, right? When it comes to urban, we will discuss about, we will never say rural worker, right? Okay, I'll come back to that later. Okay, so although economically in India, all the areas having more than 75% population involved in agriculture are designated as rural areas. Thus, in India, sometimes rural society is interpreted as agrarian society and vice versa. But theoretically, the term rural and agrarian are different. Guys, I know I'm going faster, but I will see, it has to be understood, right? The way we discuss the paper one, which is theoretical, and the thinkers, we have spent a lot of time, entire, 1.5, 2 months we spent for that. So it has to be fast. That's why I'm going fast, and we will be finishing it another maybe 10 days. So it will be fast also in the coming sessions, especially because these are things which are self-explanatory, and nobody normally will explain this much also. If you see, they just dictate in the class. That's how even I was also studied. Okay. Thus, in India, sometimes rural society is interpreted as agrarian society and vice versa. But theoretically, both are different. You know that agricultural labor include people involved in agriculture, but rural labor include both agriculture as well as non-agriculture. Like I have told you, the artisans, etc., will come. Immediately after independence, the study of Indian rural areas is nothing more than the study of agrarian system. But with time, due to occupational differentiation and the extension of welfare activities in villages, the term rural and agrarian had become distinct conceptual categories. In spite of all these changes, still agriculture continued to be dominant activity, especially in terms of number of people engaged in agriculture, either directly or indirectly. All those things, 60 to 70% are directly and or indirectly involved in agriculture. That's why agriculture is very, very important. In India, agrarian areas or rural areas are understood in terms of a unit of living called a village. Historically, India is understood as land of villages. Villages have been important from demographic, economic, and political point of view. Apart from this, statistical data highlighting the importance of villages are also available. Socially, villages has been ideological category. It is considered as an ultimate signifier of authentic social life in India. Now, the pre-British is not important for us, but just have an idea. Since ancient times, attempts have been made to understand Indian villages. The understanding of village pre-British grew from various indological sources like travelogues, literary works, etc. Villages were considered as microcosm of Hindu way of life, right? When I say Hindu way of life, all these are Hindu social institutions, whether it is joint family or Jasmani system or caste system, etc., or all are Hindu way of life. And these are authentic manifestation of traditional Hindu organization, these organizations which has been told. British. During this time, conscious attempts were made to generate an idea of Indian village. The initial studies were motivated by colonial interest of facilitating land revenue collection and the maintenance of law and order. Okay. So village studies during this period were conducted by British administrators and occasionally British scholars. These studies highlighted the isolated, unchanging, and orthodox view of Indian village. The studies done by Munro, Metcalfe, etc., consider villages as closed and isolated. Metcalfe wrote, I discussed already. He considered Indian villages as monolithic, atomistic, and unchanging entities. During this period, the idea of village was based on book view, and caste and religion were considered central institutions governing Indian villages. With the establishment of sociology as a discipline in India, there is a change. That is what we are going to see now. So village studies, here economic studies are there, socio-anthropological studies are there. Why? Because sociology 1920 to 47 is a mix. Economic studies, they focus on these issues: famine, bondage, price rise, rural indebtedness, etc. Socio-anthropological studies. Indian sociologists consider villages as the most important and the foremost unit of understanding Indian society. Apart from using indological sources, these studies took into account the actual social reality to develop a more rational view of Indian village. The studies done by Gure, Prabhu, Mukherjee challenged the previous idea of village based on isolated, unchanging nature. Guys, even during this time also, they have challenged. I've told this also. And then later also, then other thinkers have also been challenged. In the post-independence period, two types of village studies have been witnessed. Firstly, economic studies continued, but is based on welfare interest. Okay, then the sociological studies have been conducted, which is completely field view. So now we will look into the sociological studies. These studies were oriented towards a holistic approach, and now you are going for field work. That means structural functional ethnography mostly. You're going to the villages and you're going to conduct the field view. The field studies were not only oriented towards collecting information, but also employed various perspectives for the interpretation of data. A multidisciplinary approach was often used to understand villages. The field view was conducted using either participant or non-participant or direct observation method. M.N. Srinivas popularized the direct observational method. These methods aimed at giving a more realistic and contextual view of Indian village, means actual reality. Contextual view, one of the example, or the realistic or the actual reality, one of the example is clearly dominant caste and Sanskritization, something which is expected never will happen, right? You born as a Brahmin, you should end as a Brahmin. You cannot change. But Sanskritization, there is a possibility. Dominant caste, in that particular context, there is a context that you should have that conditions met. Then you can be dominant, not necessarily Brahmins are dominant always. In the year 1955 itself, there were 4 village studies. Indian villages, Indian village, Village India, just reverse the name. India's villages, just put S on this rural profile. Okay, so later on, other studies have been conducted. G.S. Gurria also conducted study in 1968 after a century and a quarter. The 1960s and 70s, Marxist perspective also emerged. So here A.R. Desai studies there. After that, after 90s, understanding the dynamism by revisiting the villages has been the trend. So here, a study is conducted by Ghanshyam Shah, Leela Dubey are examples. Okay, now why I have given this separately, because this is something which you can answer if the question is asked on anyone, because this is a general understanding of Indian village post-independence. So it doesn't matter. Now, you don't want to, you see, let's suppose they're asking you something like Andre Bette. You have no idea, absolutely no idea. Okay, so you don't want to be panicked. You can just write this, whether it is Andre Bette or S.C. Dubey, everybody will talk about this. This is a general understanding post-independence. So just write this, and that is what the best you can do in this context, if you don't know. But if you know it well, then that's fine. The myth of self-sufficiency of village was broken. That's the first, and everywhere it is the same. The isolated nature of Indian village has been rejected by almost all village study. M.N. Srinivas argued that India's villages are always part of wider social reality. Andre Bette state, you go back to times, you cannot prove that. There is no evidence that Indian villages are self-sufficient, even in economic sphere. Similar conclusions were drawn by S.C. Dubey in a study of Shamirpet village. That village study is given below. You just need to go through that. I'll give you the broad idea only. You need to go through that village studies and the features that you have to do yourself. Okay. Village studies proved that there was considerable degree of diversity within the village and between the villages of different regions. Thus, monolithic view of Indian village was broken in the light of presence of diverse grouping and complex social relationship. M.N. Srinivas highlighted the presence of village factionalism cutting across caste lines. Guys, this is not functionalism. This is factionalism. Just by mistake, I have written it as functionalism. You need to edit it now itself. I'll do it, but I may do it later. I forget it. Every time I think of doing it after the session, but I always forget it. Village factionalism. Guys, factionalism means it's like, see, there is a Brahmin here. This is a village, and this is another village. Okay, so Brahmin here and Brahmin here, and there is a Kshatriya here and there is a Kshatriya here. So the point here is these two will be connected more than the Brahmin here and the Brahmin here. So village A, this is village B. Okay, so Brahmin and Kshatriya in the same village, they will be more together than two Brahmins in the two villages. So this is what village factionalism. You are more connected with your village, and this even cut across caste line. Caste is not important in that way. You won't even think about you both are the same caste. Okay, so you both are from the same village is more important. Similarly, Various studies on family and kinship highlights the diversity of Indian village. During 50s and 60s, the general idea of Indian village was based on cooperation and interdependence. Why? Because you are using a functional perspective. So this is what you need to now here. So whatever we discussed so far, it's fine for all. Now this you need to be very careful. This will be for functional perspective. Okay, like, but at the same time, if you're getting question related to air desai and all, what you need to do, you need to change this. It is not cooperation, it's about exploitation and unequal relationship. And you can write example judge-money system, which is unequal relationship, unequal distribution of rewards, caste system, which is again based on exploitation. So functionalist, they will try to see this as mutual support or interdependence or cooperation and reciprocal relation, but Marxist will try to see the opposite. So depends on the perspective. You need to change that. Otherwise, things are same. Okay. So here, various institutions like caste, judge-money system were seen in reciprocal terms. Studies done by Dubé, Srinivas, etc. They are functionalist, structural functionalists. So you will see their approach will be same. On the other hand, yeah, here it is Marxist. So here, if you want, you can mention functionalist, so that you will not be confused later. But anyway, you will see these two names and you know that, right? And since it is mentioned here Marxist, so you can understand this is functionalist. They highlighted the exploitative nature. So here it is cooperation and interdependence. Here it is exploitative nature. You can add these unequal distribution of rewards, etc. Studies done by Bethe and Ornstein highlighted the exploitative nature of judge-money system. A.R. Desai's writings. Okay. Similarly, various studies on land reform, green revolution using Marxist perspective provided a critique to the government policies and program. On the whole, villages was essentially understood as a community acting as a source of identification of people. Adrian Mayer concept of village patriotism is quite significant. It's like village is your identity. Like when you go outside, India is your identity, and you know what is patriotism. Same way, you have that feeling with your own village. Okay. Mackim Marriott used Redfield's notion of little community to study Indian village. We'll discuss about this later if possible. On the other hand, studies done by F.G. Bailey, Paul Gilbert, Andre Bethe contested the excessive emphasis on communitarian character and highlighted the deep-seated cleavages which underlies the apparent unity of village. So there are a lot of differences. That is what they are trying to highlight, right? They are using Marxist perspective. Sripuram as a whole constituted a unit of physical, but to a much lesser extent in social sense. Physically, they are together, but not socially. There are, cleavages and differences and issues has been happening between them. Therefore, the idea of village post-independence period was based on dynamic, holistic, diverse nature of Indian villages. Now, this is something which I have discussed here. It is codified into 10 points. I've taken this from Essential Sociology. So you can read it yourself and complete it. It is the same thing. Whatever we discussed, okay, is written here. Whatever we discussed, book view, then how is it has been changed and everything is there. So just go through this village patriotism, the concepts and everything is given. Now, when it comes to this specific study, SC Dubé study on village, if this is asked as a question, this has been asked as a question before also, you need to write things which has been discussed pre-independence and then post-independence, the general idea of village and everything. And then finally, you need to write this and you need to focus on the 6 factors. This has to be there in your answer that contributed to the status differentiation in the village community of Shamirpet. So what are their religion and caste, land ownership, wealth, position in government service, village organization, age, and distinctive personality. So remember this is very important. The 6 features separately also they can ask you. That's it, guys. I'm done with the session. Any questions you can ask. Land tenure system we'll discuss tomorrow. Right. Tomorrow before the session, watch the video on land tenure system and land reforms, which has been done. Because I'll be discussing on the impact. That is what more important for sociology. Land tenure system, it is nothing but Zamindari settlement, Rotwari settlement, Mahalwari settlement, and land reform. I'll quickly do that, but if possible, just watch the video because I'll go very quickly with this because that's not important in sociology. I've not seen any questions which have been asked. I'll focus on the consequences and the impact. Okay, any questions here, guys, from this area?